Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Before its proscription, various youth groups and even more recognizable regional socio-political organizations across northern Nigeria had been very critical of the now outlawed Operation Amotekun. A lot of Nigerians will be wondering why, but we're now going to have a conversation around that with Ahmed Buhari, a businessman and information and communications technology consultant who aspired to become president of Nigeria in 2019. He will also assess President Buhari's performance thus far, as well as the impact of youth empowerment programs by the government of the day. Welcome to the show, Ahmed.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tunde and Leila. Good to be here.
Good morning, Ahmed.
Well, good to see you again in this new year. Happy New Year to you. Now, quickly, you were a presidential, yes, thanks. You were a presidential candidate in the 2019 general elections. As it turned out, President Buhari won the election, and that, his victory was further affirmed by the Supreme Court. Now, when you look back, almost 7 months since he returned to office, how will you rate him? Will you say that the momentum is different and expectations have been met, and you are satisfied that you lost to him and his party?
Well, a lot has to be taken into consideration with regards to what has happened in the last 7 months. And not to forget that there's been a lot of distraction as well on socio-political issues that has sort of derailed us from focusing on what was being cooked and tried to achieve by the administration in office. And to say that if it was worthy, at the time that this happened, very clearly, most Nigerians were fixated with a two-party system, and at that point, we needed to be, strategic and honest with ourselves as to where we thought we needed to go. And by all means, most of the things that I have seen the administration display are things that we also, as a political party, at the time we met with the leadership of the APC, did discuss that we would like to see happen. And by no means would I say some of these things have played out exactly how we wanted them to be, because generally from the body language of the Nigerian people, you would also see a lot of skepticism. Rather than us focus on some of the major issues and ask some of the major questions, we pick on the small things, and although it's politics, as I know, but then we miss the big points. I know right now we have, the last 7 months also, we've been talking about what the Supreme Court judgment is going to be. We had the situation of Showore, we had the situation of whether the president was going to have another wife and things like that. I mean, these kinds of things really would make us not concentrate on what governance is achieving or how it's helping to reduce some of the issues that we've always had. I mean, I keep telling everybody, I'm in Abuja right now, and just a few years ago, I couldn't just move around freely like I am right now in Abuja. For me, as far as I'm concerned, that's a huge improvement. I mean, even the Eagle Square that we all go to celebrate things these days, 6 years ago, we couldn't do that. I still think that the issues are a lot, and I think that before we can get a good resolve, we must start thinking about how we can, as a people, as a country, start thinking clearly how we can reconcile. Before I move forward, I want to say a very big thank you to all retired, serving, and fallen heroes as we marked the Armed Forces Remembrance Day a few days ago, and to also remind us as a people that the war that happened, the civil war that happened, didn't have a reason to happen. And if the negotiations that probably happened in the Aburi Accord were anything to go by all means, I think it's about time Nigeria finds a place to apologize to the people of the Southeast and to see how we can start a reconciliation agenda to make sure that people start feeling the need to call themselves Nigeria, and to see how we can all work for the collective progress. Because even though we have so many Igbo people living in the northern part of the country, they can't just wait to go home at the December and New Year period and they come back with a re-energized hate for the people that they live with. So I personally, I belong to a generation of people that think it's about time we start bringing these issues to the table, find a way to reconcile, find a way to heal, and let's move on as a country.
Thank you, Ahmed. Now, you just described the improved security situation in Abuja, and I'm sure you know that all 36 states of the country would love to give the same assessment, but that is simply not the case. With a view to bolstering the efforts of the police and the military with regards to security, the Southwest governors got together and came up with an operation codenamed Amotekun. You'll be aware, of course, that the Attorney General gave a statement declaring it as unlawful, whereas you have an organization like Hisbah, which has been running uncontested, still making arrests as of this week. It shows a kind of a double standard, and this is a recurring thing that you have actually alluded to just now, with the perception amongst Igbos, Yorubas, different tribes in Nigeria, that one standard applies to some and not to all, that all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others, to quote George Orwell. What is your comment on all of that?
So I like the way the recent happenings have been going on, especially with regards to the Attorney General of the Federation / the Amotekun agenda / the Hisbah that you mentioned, and there are more like Karota and civilian JTF and like Odua groups. Like we have, not to forget that in Lagos we also have people who are under payrolls that do similar, they carry out similar activities. I've always said, as an individual, I've always said that it's about time that all of these groups present very clearly their working documents. On what basis are these groups formed? On what basis do this group operate? You know, I keep thinking to myself, when I go to Kano, for example, and I see Hisbah make arrests, or sometimes even, flog people, and I ask myself, on what grounds do all of these things happen? I mean, nobody is saying this, and it needs to be extremely clear. We need to know exactly why these things are happening, and know whether these are things we want to enshrine in the Constitution, or these are things we need to, clearly push away completely. For me, I'm still of the opinion that if, for example, there's going to be a Kenyan police that will be, flogging people, driving around the Kenyan land for whatever reason, I can imagine the outrage that's going to follow. So I think it's about time. I'm glad that this is going to the Supreme Court, and I'm hopeful that the exercise will give us clarity as to where we need to stand when all of these kind of issues are being brought up. But contrary to the belief that the North, so to speak, is against Amotekun, it beats me, because I am finding it very hard to understand how the North is against Amotekun. For all I care, I think what we just want is peace, but it has to be done constitutionally.
Certainly, but this is the question I now have for you then. The arguments that we have in front of us is that it can be backed constitutionally if you want to take it based on interpretation. So are you then saying that, in your opinion, state houses of assembly should have put together laws that supported Amotekun, Operation Amotekun, before going ahead with it? Are you suggesting that it can't be backed by existing laws in the Constitution, which is the argument that is being put forward in support of the Southwest Security Network?
Well, I wish I was a lawyer. I'm optimistic that if this goes to court, we will get some clarity on it.
Well, let's talk about your own political ambition. You tried to be president in 2019. It didn't work out. Have you just returned to business and, your private life, or you are still interested in the presidential politics of 2023? And in 2023, do you share the view by some Nigerians that 2023 should be the turn of Igbos, and that the North, having had, a stretch of 8 years, should allow power to go elsewhere at the presidential level?
You see, Doctor, in all honesty, I would have been a strong advocate for the eastern part of the country to produce some sort of leadership so that we see where this is going to go. But unfortunately, just the way I went through the race from 2016 down to 2019, it is a very clear fact that it is the political parties that sort of hold the platform on which a politician or a candidate can aspire for an office. And if you are unable to, integrate yourself properly in a political party that has got the kind of structure that can give you the kind of victory that you desire, you must start working through the ranks. unfortunately, no matter how good you might think you are, no matter what you want to bring to the table, the people are enshrined in the two political party system. This can change, but it has to do with a massive movement that is going to make a lot of people believe that a new party, a new political party is something that they can hold close to their heart. I mean, it's not just peculiar to Nigeria. You go to the United States, and if you say you want to be an independent, I am sorry, I don't think you're going to go very far. It's going to be an election that is going to be between the Republicans or the Democrats. The same way in Nigeria, it's either between the APC or the PDP. So if the Igbo people want to produce a president, my guess will be that they start working clearly and intelligently with all the political parties and understand that it is politics, and emotions and sentiments should be really pushed to the very far end when it comes to how you want to succeed politically. With regards to my decision in the political space, I have never wavered. I have always said to everybody that, look, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so for that reason, I think I've grown, I have learned, I'm learning, and I do understand that to get to the top, you must, walk through the ranks.
Thank you, Ahmed. Well, you're definitely a pragmatist. You're one of those candidates who stepped down for President Muhammadu Buhari, having read the writing on the wall. But it was said that if the younger candidates had displayed that kind of attitude towards one another, that vaunted third force could have been a reality. Do you foresee a coalition similar to what took place to form APC amongst younger candidates like yourself?
Tundun, make no mistake, Tundun. Collectively, all the people that contested, apart from the APC and the PDP, that were able to garner for themselves about 30 million votes, collectively, every other person who contested, every other person who contested were only able to raise 183,000 votes. So even if you put it together, it is not, we didn't even scratch the surface. This is the clear truth of the matter. So even at the time that we kept talking to each other, we had a pact, we sat down, we negotiated, we tried to, see how best this can work, not forgetting that the political realities were glaring us in the face as to where this was going to take us to. Many people still did not understand. It was still driven by emotions, it was still driven by sentiments. Many people still think it's about Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. I mean, look at Dr. Ruben Abati over there. If I ask him where he's from now, he's probably going to tell me one particular region. But in reality, how can he clearly say he's not from Katsina? I mean, if I ask him if he can tell me 4 generations before his great-grandfather, he cannot. This is the problem with the African system. It's about time we stop creating these borderlines that have been embedded into our system by the colonialists, making us believe that we are different. I think we are more of the same than different, and the more we can start looking at ourselves collectively, we will be able to fight the bigger enemy and not ourselves.
Thank you, Ahmed. And just as we round up the conversation, then, if we look at it in terms of policy now, would you then agree with the viewpoint that the Not Too Young to Run bill, for example, is fallacious, seeing as it doesn't necessarily create that room for young people to really excel within the policy? Very briefly, we only have a few seconds.
No, it did create a lot. A lot of young people became politically aware, politically conscious. But the other thing that we need to push aside now is the sentiments and the hatred and the concern for superiority or inferiority, complexity, or depending on what side of the divide you are. But it was a great move, and I think it has pushed a lot of young people to be politically aware, politically conscious. And I think moving forward, like I said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. The future is bright.
Thank you very much, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Buhari.
Thanks for joining us.